आपकी फाइल अपने एरिया के पुलिस स्टेशन में जाकर दिखा दीजिए, आपका काम हो जाएगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच मिस्टर जोशी। आप एक बहुत अच्छे वकील भी नहीं, एक बहुत अच्छे इंसान भी नहीं। आपने ऐसे मेरी मदद की जो मैं आपके जैसे फ्रीलांसर एडवोकेट को तो कोई फ्री में भी केस नहीं दे। काला कोट पहनने से कोई एडवोकेट नहीं बन जाता। ये पूछिए। ठीक है, मुझे पता है। पैसा नहीं मिलता, मैं आपको फीस नहीं दे पाऊंगी। ये मेरी सोने की बाली आपकी फीस समझ कर रख लीजिए। पता तो कैसी बातें कर रही हैं? देखिए, आप मेरी बड़ी बहन जैसी, और बड़ी बहन से फीस नहीं आशीर्वाद देते हैं। आप तो बस मुझे आशीर्वाद दीजिए। कोई अच्छे एडवोकेट तो है ही, अच्छे इंसान भी है। आपके मीटिंग के दौरान मैं ठीक था, वैसे मेरी मीटिंग के दौरान आप भी चुप रहिएगा। परीक्षा देने जाता ऐसे परीक्षा तो आज भी पता नहीं क्या अरे क्या रहा है? अरे वैसे करना पड़ता है ना। वो होगा बेटा, अच्छा ही होगा। तुम बस अपनी ईमानदारी से काम करते रहना, बाकी सब टाइम पर छोड़ दो। यस, ऑल द बेस्ट। ऑल द बेस्ट डैडी, ऑल द बेस्ट डैड। जल्दी क्या है? मुझे भी लीजिए। अरे नहीं चक्कर, मैं भी तो जा रहा हूँ इनके साथ। इस हफ्ते तो चलेंगे ही, मेरे साथ बोला। प्रणाम। अरे प्रणाम। अच्छा, आपको जो बोला है वो प्लीज याद रखो।
Some improbable adventure. It's what drives me, the desire to find something new and unique and really drill down deep. Uncovering Watergate-style scandals or exposing some societal ill, or capturing the birth of a social movement, are the stories that you hope for. But when you first start as a cub reporter, your days are often filled with a lot of research and shoe leather reporting on behalf of more significant reporters. You meet a lot of weirdos doing this, but it's exhilarating all the same. In those days, I lived about 5 miles from my office in a rundown flop house where my space was too small and the rent was too large. I didn't have a car at that point and it was a bit too long to walk, so I started taking the bus every day. If you ever want to see the lifeblood of a metropolitan area, take a public bus. I'm not even joking when I say my time on the buses made me a better reporter. You learn the ebb and flow of a place. You meet people, some strange, some very strange, and you see city civic service in action. About 6 months in, when I really started to get the job and the pulse of the city, I was working on a story with a veteran reporter. It was a political scandal and I was about as excited as you can get. Moving into the politics beat is a big deal, and if this story made waves, I could be looking at a real promotion. I was thrilled to get the gig. Every day I got to pick the brains of one of the best in the business and feel them out on how they approach a story, or talk to a witness or learn how they get people to open up to them. You also get to know every dive bar and greasy spoon downtown. Stories start in these places as rumors before they get research and blossom into an exclusive article on page 1. They can be a bit sketchy though. Thankfully, the lead reporter, let's call them Pat, was a well-established figure in these locales. Their shadow darkening the door frames was a common sight, especially at the bars. We were having an eye-popper, their created phrase for scrambled eggs, bacon, and a shot of whiskey at a local dive, and I showed up about 10 minutes late. Your drink was getting cold, so I took it. Oh, it's fine. I ordered a coffee at the corner, I said, holding up my Starbucks cup. Hey, don't show that around here. I've got a reputation to uphold, he said, looking around. If you're worried about your man of the people shtick, you'll be fine. Everybody drinks Starbucks every once in a while. They're McCoffee, basically. Nothing more salt of the earth is that, I said, taking a sip from my iced coffee. Well, then you drink it, he said, scooping up a forkful of scrambled eggs. Yeah, the bus was a bit behind, I said with a shrug. Nothing I can do about a guy taking 10 minutes putting his bike on the rack. Jesus, you're on the metro? Pat asked, nearly spitting bits of eggs on me. Why? No car and my apartment's too far away, I answered. No, I don't miss those days. Please tell me you don't give money to people at bus stops. I mean, sometimes, I said before he cut me off. Yeah, you're getting scammed. Most of those people run games on roofs. I don't think it's as many as you think, I suggested. Nope. I've been around and seen some of them, and they talk. You know that diner on Washington? A lot of the street guys hang there. They share info on who's a mark, especially with regular riders. It was only once or twice, I said, feeling a bit judged. Best advice to tell them is to head to the Mission on Adam Street. They'll get what they need there. Plus, you don't want to give money to a tag-along kid, he said, assuming that I knew what the heck a tag-along kid was. Just then, his phone started ringing, and he went to go talk with somebody else. We had to jet not long after that, so I forgot to follow up with a tag-along kids thing, as we rushed for a clandestine meeting with some minor official. I wish I had it. The minor official confirmed his title was all too proper for him and gave us little to nothing to work with. We ran around the rest of the day chasing down phantoms and not finding squat. Before I knew it, the sun had gone down and it was nearly 10. Pat said he'd give me a lift home, but he lived all the way across town and I felt terrible making him go so far out of his way. I said I'd be fine taking the bus back home. They ran pretty late and I was used to it. Pat drove me to the closest stop and said that we would meet for a real coffee in the morning. Looking back, I see a lot of missed red flags about my encounter. Things that I should have questioned a bit more, or paid attention to. I guess hindsight is 20/20, and we all make mistakes. But I take those words because I'm paid to notice things out of the ordinary or odd. The first thing that struck me as odd was the light at the bus stop started to frizz. Not all the time, but it seemed like every few minutes. It would blink like it was shorting out. You could actually hear the electricity popping. I sat as far away from the light as possible. The second thing I remember being off was feeling cold. It had been warm all day, and even after the sun went down, it was still lovely. Not like eggs cooking on the sidewalk hot, but not cold either. Yet at that stop, I could feel an occasional cold spell around me. Also, my phone died. I had at least half a battery the last time that I had checked it, but when I went to glance down at the screen, I saw that it had died on me. Instead of seeing my lock screen background, I saw my face reflected in the black mirror. I cursed and put the useless brick back into my bag. I was about to get up and go check the time at the liquor store near the bus stop, but when I stood up, I saw a small figure in the darkness about 10 feet away. At first, it nearly gave me a heart attack, but once I calmed down from my initial surprise, I noticed the shadow was a kid. They didn't come towards me at first, but just kind of hung back and watched. I put my head on a swivel just in case this was all a setup. I had covered enough robbery stories to know that this is the exact scenario for that. I decided to be bold. "Excuse me," I called out. "Do you need something?" I could see the kid was shifting from side to side, nervous then looking for the voice. Any ideas about them being a front for a gang or something dissolved in front of me. Without taking a step near me, they asked in a soft, spoken and tiny voice, "Is this a stop for the number 12 bus?" "Yes," I said. "It's due any minute." "Oh, okay." "Are you waiting for someone?" They didn't answer. I decided to take a step towards them. "Are you lost?" "Yes," they said back meekly. "But I just needed someone to show me the right bus stop." "Well, this is the right bus stop. I think the bus should be here in about 5 or 10 minutes. "Oh, thank you." The kid was standing alone in the shadows. I could barely make them out with the light flickering. This should have been another warning, but I didn't overthink it. Kids are weirdos sometimes. I felt good that the kid was cautious around strangers. But something was nagging my brain about this kid. Something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I wanted to follow up with some questions, but I didn't want to stare at him. As my mind tried to figure out how to engage without coming across as odd, I heard the bus approaching. I turned back to see the kid, and they were gone. I hadn't heard anybody run away or anything. They just disappeared. I assumed they went back to their house or whatever and got on the bus. The rest of the ride home was uneventful, save for a guy doing a horrible rendition of Billie Jean for the last 10 or so minutes. When I got home, my neighborhood was quiet, which was typical for this time of night. I walked over to the front door of my apartment building and stopped cold. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed somebody poking their head out of the alley. When we locked eyes, they pulled their head back into the darkness. My heart started to beat faster. I quickly punched in my code and heard the door buzz open. As I walked in, I heard a kid's voice call out, "Thank you," and then start laughing. I closed the door behind me but peered through the window out into the street. I glanced towards where I had seen the figure in the alley, but I could only see so far from my position. I was just about to turn around and trudge up the 3 flights when I heard running from the alley and saw the blur of somebody darting across the street. In a brief bout of insanity, I had opened the door to chase after them, but as soon as they hit the other side of the dark street, I lost sight of them. I just heard the slap of feet on concrete as they ran away. When I got home, I double-checked my locks and grabbed a baseball bat that I had from last summer's softball league. Go Gazette deadlines, and I kept it in my room. I was a little bit on edge, but not really worried something was going to happen. Even if I had been followed, how the hell would they know what apartment was mine? Even still, I needed to chill out. I rolled a joint and crashed on the couch. I turned on Netflix and picked some. Within a half hour, I had passed out. When I woke up, it was still dark out. I had fallen asleep with my glasses on, and the frames were digging into the bridge of my nose. I took them off and rubbed the indent on my skin when I heard somebody laughing on the street. It wasn't a full-throated guffaw or anything, but more like a playful giggle, like something a kid would do. I made my way to the window that faced the street and peeked out. I scanned around the road and didn't see anyone or anything out there. I was about to head to bed when, out of the corner of my eye, I caught something moving just out of range of the streetlight. It was a person, but as they walked by the lamppost, the light blinked out and went dead. I stayed a few minutes more, but I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. The sleepy part of my brain convinced my scared part that I was making mountains out of a molehill and just needed to head back to bed. As usual, sleep brain won, and within 10 minutes, I was out. The following day at the office, I found Pat waiting for me with 2 cups of coffee. He nodded as I sat down and slid one of the cups of Joe to me. Bus issues again? I'm on time, I said, taking a sip of the coffee. Wow, this is good. I know, he said, smirking. And for a reporter, being on time is being there 30 minutes early. I got a huge lead on the story. Someone inside the administration is looking to talk. Someone big. I was excited. Break the story open, I said excitedly. And break the world open big, if they decide to go on the record. They want to meet us and feel us out before they start giving us any information. How did you pull this? I know everyone, Pat said matter-of-factly. It was only a matter of time before somebody spoke up. They know what's going on is wrong, I said. And that is what always flips people, Pat said, taking a sip of the coffee. Outside of socio and psychopaths, most people have an internal altimeter that tells them when they should deploy their safety chute. That's true even with government hacks. You can only swallow so much garbage before you spit it up. I like the parachute metaphor better. Everyone's a critic. Come on, we got some stuff to do. Hopefully not throw it up. Don't get gross on me now. Professionalism always, Pat said with a wink. Within the hour, we were meeting in a place 30 minutes outside of town. A tiny roadside diner that caters to long haulers and families exhausted from travel. We sat in the corner and discussed things like we were talking to a foreign agent. The person, I'll call them Al for security's sake, never burn a source people, was hesitant to speak and gave us basic one-word answers. Once lunch got there, they became a bit more chatty. Food can do that to a person. It's kind of a well-known secret, Al said, finishing off an onion ring. Nobody questions it because questions lead to demotions and firings. We just let it go on. And the mayor knows about this, Pat asked, himself indulging in an onion ring. Well, the mayor ordered it, Al said, years ago. One of their first acts in office. It flew under the radar because of the policing issues, but it's been on the books for years. Now the act is all well and good, legal if a bit dubious, but the actions people regarding the act, well, those are gray areas at best. A lot of us have asked the mayor to clamp down on this, but they refuse. A lot of money comes through those lines, you know. Yeah, money makes the world go round, Pat said. Can I ask a question? I said, walking out onto the ledge. I don't think Pat expected me to say much. In fact, based on the look he shot me, I know he didn't. But before I could stop myself, I asked away. How many different departments does these skim happen from? Just a few. All of them. Al laughed, and for a second, I thought that I had screwed the pooch. All of them. A lot of people are lining their pockets with this, and no one is holding the line. The corruption is everywhere. Pat gave me a nod, and I felt good about myself. We chatted for about a half hour more before Al left to get back to the office. Pat and I stayed behind and ordered pie. Key lime was their specialty, and we had some coffee. You did good, Pat said, taking a bite out of the pie. He opened up a bunch of new areas for us to explore. I thought it was limited to only the mayor's office and maybe the police department. But if most of the people are skimming... Thank you, I said, not wanting to blush but feeling it happen anyway. This is a red ball story. Yeah, it's got that vibe, I'll tell you that much. You also just got a whole hell of a lot of New York. We need to know who runs the departments and see if anyone is willing to talk. Start small, then work your way up. If we spook them, we lose them. I nodded and was excited to hit the ground running. We got back to the office and I went to work. I was in one of those crap I missed dinner working sessions where you fail to notice that it's suddenly night and you're starving. So I decided to call it a night. I was going to hurry home, order some Chinese, and get back to my Brit dating show. I needed to decompress from work. I left the building and started walking the dark streets towards the closest bus stop. As I was walking, though, I heard a pair of footsteps walking behind me. Now, I'm not some paranoid hothouse flower, but even I tense up when I hear somebody walking behind me on a dark street. I made sure to hold my keys in between my fingers in case I had to punch someone. As I walked past a trash can on the street, I suddenly heard someone giggling in the alley off to my left. I picked up my pace a bit, but as I passed the dark void between the buildings, I glanced over to see if anything was waiting there. There wasn't. I sighed. Then from behind me, someone or something knocked over the garbage can. The noise scared the crap out of me and I broke out into a full-on run. I heard giggling and footsteps pounding on the pavement right behind me. I hadn't run track in years, but muscle memory kicked in and I was moving. After a decent clip, I decided to stop and spin around to see what was chasing me. When I did, I was surprised to see nothing. Now, the stretch of road that I was running on didn't have any areas that you could quickly duck off to. We were talking storefronts, but everything was closed. Unless this person decided to run in the completely opposite direction. There wasn't anyone near me. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. Was I going crazy? Was someone from the city onto our story and wanted to intimidate us? Was I being stalked? None of those answers set me at ease as I stood on a dark street catching my breath. I saw the bus stop up ahead and it felt like my safety zone, like I was a kid playing a game of tag. I convinced myself that if I got there, no harm would come to me. I was sure of it. I know that doesn't make any sense now, but when you've had the heebies meet the jeebies behind you as you ran alone on the street, you make nonsensical agreements with yourself. What was really weird was, as I walked down the street, quicker than my usual pace, every time I passed a light pole, the light flickered. At first, I assumed it was the failing city infrastructure, but it became too apparent that it was a pattern. Was I setting off the lights? I got to the bus stop and took a seat on the cold metal bench. I couldn't stop bouncing my leg. I was still so full of nervous energy. I was ready to fight if I had to, but I was hoping the bus would get here before it got to that. And that's when I heard someone behind me call out. "Excuse me," they said, nearly causing me to jump out of my skin. When I calmed down, I realized that the voice belonged to the kid from the night before. "Was that you chasing me?" I said, suddenly finding my parents' voice. "That wasn't nice." "I wasn't chasing you. I was chasing the thing that was chasing you." My blood went cold. "What?" "You heard it right. Footsteps breathing. It was coming for you and I stopped it by pushing over the trash can." "Why were you laughing?" "I wasn't. It was. It finds your fear funny." But I heard a kid laugh. "Can I have $1 for the bus?" I heard a kid laugh. "It can sound like anything. Can I have $1 for a bus pass? I need to get home." "Where do you live? Where are your parents?" "They're waiting for me at home." "Where is your home?" "Oh, not that far. I saved you. Can't you help me?" The light above me started to buzz and blink. I felt a cold breeze blow by me even though it was as still as a grave that night. Off in the distance, I heard the bus rounding the corner. "I helped you. Can you help me?" the little voice said. I reached into my wallet and fished out a 5. "Thank you," I said, holding the bill out. The little figure moved out of the shadows. They were slight, barely there even and pale. As they got closer, I felt another cool breeze across my face. The light above flickered and I finally caught a glimpse of their face. The little girl's eyes were black, startlingly so. Her skin was so white that her eyes stood out like somebody had shined a light on them. I only saw them for a minute because the overhead light flickered out. They were haunting. As the little girl took the bill, she dragged her nail across my wrist and broke the skin. She laughed and ran away from me. As the bus pulled up, she had disappeared into the shadows. She never got on. I kept replaying the encounter in my mind the rest of the night. It even ruined a Brit date. It was bothering me. What was following me? How long had whoever or whatever been hanging around me? Was it natural or supernatural? What about that little girl? Who was she and why did she keep popping up near the bus but never actually riding the bus? Why were her eyes so black? Every time I closed my eyes, I could see her face staring at me. Those doll eyes, unnatural and cold, and her smile. Was she one of Pat's tag-along kids? I knew I needed to find out. I pulled out my phone and gave him a call. I knew it was late, but I also knew that he'd probably be up, nursing a drink somewhere. "Do you know what time it is?" Pat said as he picked up the phone. "Sorry, I know it's late," I said quickly, moving to defuse the anger. "I have a question for you. This couldn't wait until the morning. You remember a couple of days ago when you mentioned a tag-along kid to me?" "Well, vaguely," Pat said. "Why?" "What exactly are tag-along kids?" There was a long pause. "What's going on?" "Nothing, I mean," I started before he cut me off. "You don't call this late for nothing. Is something following you?" "I don't know." Pat sighed. "You didn't give anyone money, did you?" I didn't want to tell him, but I finally croaked out a small "Yes." Oh God. What did the kid say? That something was following me and they were going to. And then I heard a giggle on the street outside my apartment. Going to what? I moved to the window and peered out the side of my curtains to not signal anything down there. At first look, there wasn't a soul. But then I saw a streetlight start to flicker. My eyes focused on the dark and I saw them. The little girl was standing in the shadows outside my apartment. Hey, what's wrong? The girl, she's outside my apartment. Is she alone? I glanced around. I think so, I don't see anyone else. Good, Pat said. Sometimes they travel in packs. I'm sorry, what? Listen to me. Whatever happens, do not leave your apartment. Do not open the door for anyone regardless of what they say. Why? Because something wants into your place. What for? They want you. Why? You don't want to find out. I'm going to head over with somebody that can help. How will I know it's you? I'll say a password. Banana Tuesday. You hear me say Banana Tuesday, it's me. Well, what should I do in the meantime? Nothing. Don't open the door, don't engage. Don't do anything. And for God's sake, don't let anything touch you. I stayed quiet. She didn't touch you, did she? Well, she scratched my wrist when I gave her the money. I heard Pat pull the phone away from his mouth and swear loudly. And then he got back on. Just stay calm and wait for me. If you have salt, put some in all the corners of your apartment. A little pile, nothing crazy. Just calm down. Just calm down, I thought. Sure. Why hadn't I thought of that? I know Pat was going to help, but how, I didn't know. But I couldn't help but feel like that was a band-aid on a gunshot wound. Still, I thanked him and I hung up the phone. I walked back to the window and I peered outside. The night was still, and the light was no longer flickering. From an outsider's perspective, it looked like a typical urban night. I sighed and moved away from the window. As soon as I was about to plant myself on the couch and not move until I heard the words, Banana Tuesday, I suddenly couldn't remember if I had locked my door. If something wanted to come in here, I should probably not only lock it but wedge something under the crack to make sure that they can't easily break in. I deadbolted and chain-locked my apartment door before dropping to the ground to cram that wedge into the door frame when I saw a shadow darken outside my door. I froze and tried to hold my breath. Somebody was only a thin, low-rent apartment quality door away from me. I'm not religious, but I said a silent prayer in case I needed some divine help. There was a giggle and then they sprinted off. As the figure ran down the hallway, I could hear the lights buzz until they burst. Glass shattered all down the hall as the footsteps just disappeared. I rolled away from the door and hid behind the couch. Suddenly the TV turned on, and I could hear my favorite British dating show, and I nearly had a heart attack. It's not that my sensibilities have been breached, but I had paused the screen when I called, but something had just turned it on. Turns out that person was me. In my mad scramble to the couch, I had hit play on the remote on accident. I blurted out laughter, I couldn't help it. But that laughter turned into tears. Stress was getting to me. I hit pause again and tried to collect myself. My cheeks were slick with tears, and before I could wipe them away, the cut in my wrist started burning. It felt like somebody had pressed an iron down onto the wound. I dashed over to the sink and ran water over it, but it didn't seem to do anything. What the hell? I yelled through gritted teeth. How can this get any worse? That's when the power in my apartment shut off. I hunched down low for reasons that I still don't understand. If this thing had the power to shut off my power, surely it could see me slithering along the ground. But I didn't care how it looked. My brain had shifted into autopilot, and my actions were coming from some deep animal part of my gray matter. I crawled out of my kitchen and back towards the couch. I kept my eyes on the door to see if I could see anything move in the dark. My eyes were adjusting, and what was impossible to see a few moments ago was now coming into view. Suddenly, I heard heavy footsteps stomping down the hall. They started near the stairs and stopped right in front of my door. I held my breath and waited for what the hell would happen next. I felt a cool breeze move past me, and I saw my hair move with it. I clenched my whole body and started trembling in fear. I heard and then saw something being pushed under the crack in the door. It was a small piece of paper. I watched as whoever was on the other side forced it all the way into my apartment, and then I heard a giggle and the footsteps run away from my door. I gathered every bit of courage that I had and I crawled to the door. Even with the locks, I was afraid something would come barreling through and snatch me up. As I got closer, the small piece of paper came into view and I instantly knew what it was. It was the $5 bill that I gave the girl. Suddenly, the TV flipped on and nearly gave me a heart attack. I wasn't near the remote this time. Something else had turned it on. Worse, there was no sound coming out. And then the screen started to flicker and the sound of static came out of the speakers. As I watched in horror, I saw a pair of black eyes slowly fade onto the screen until it was all that I could see. Through the static, I heard the faint and soft voice of the little girl. She was saying, "I can see you. You're in my home. I saved you. Let me in. You're my parent now." And then the giggling. I shut my eyes and started to scream when suddenly the TV shut off with the rest of my apartment sprang back to life. I slowly opened my eyes to see my ordinary, crappy apartment. Looking at the fiber, I noticed that the eyes of Lincoln had been covered in what looked like blood. I decided then that I would burn that bill and send it back to hell. There was a knock on my door. "It's Pat," the voice on the other side said. "Hey, I got here as soon as I could. Open up. I have somebody here who can help you." "Pat," I said, finding my voice. "Is it you?" "Of course it's me. Who the hell else would come over this late?" "What's the password?" "What?" "The password you gave me, what is it?" "Are we really going to do this?" "You're in serious trouble and I can help. Just let me in." "What is the password?" I said slowly. They were silent for a bit and then Pat said, "Banana sundae." A cool sweat enveloped my body. Whatever this was, it wasn't Pat. I felt tears run down my face. I collected myself and just geeked out. That's wrong. And then all hell broke loose. The person started banging on my door and screaming. My light bulbs all buzzed until they burst, sending shards of glass everywhere. My TV turned on and off. I could hear my neighbors' doors opening and slamming shut, children crying, people screaming, and giggling. The giggling over everything. I shut my eyes to try to drown it out, but it didn't do anything. I opened them and saw the $5 bill lift off the ground and float around the room like a tornado had picked it up. Suddenly, over the chaos, I heard Pat yell, "Hey!" from the stairwell. Everything stopped in an instant. The $5 bill was suspended in the air until, like a heat-seeking missile, it flew through the crack and back into the hallway. I heard little footsteps run in the opposite direction. "It's Pat! Banana Tuesday, Banana Tuesday!" I pulled myself up from the floor, opened the door, and was relieved to see Pat standing there. I collapsed into his arms and cried. The other person that was with him was some sort of priest or a former priest. They spent hours cleansing my house, my wound, my aura, burning sage and salting rooms, all that odd stuff. Pat stayed with me for most of the night. We talked as the priest did his cleansing. He really calmed me down, and I'm forever grateful for our friendship. After a while, I finally asked him about the tag-along kids. He sighed. When I first started years ago, when dinosaurs still roamed the earth, I was working a story about local legends. It was mostly bunk, a fun story for Halloween. But some of the people that I spoke to believed it, especially people who had had encounters with the tag-along kids. They said with a sigh. Pat paused, and I could see his whole demeanor shift. A real fear from deep down in his soul was forcing its way up to the surface. Can I smoke in here? I don't care. He lit up a smoke and took a drag. Exhaling a plume of smoke, he continued. I thought it'd be fun if I went to where people reported seeing the kids. The bus lines at night, out-of-the-way gas stations, that kind of thing. To see if I could experience it for myself. Bring a little bit of myself into the story. I found a kid, but I didn't know what I was messing around with. Let's just say my little encounter didn't make the piece because, if it had, my editor would have thought that I was on shrooms. Are they demons? He didn't say yes, but didn't dispute it either. The kids cling too, especially if they make contact. And that little scratch, it scars. He held up his hand, and I noticed a jagged scar across the back of it. He nodded to the priest. They'll be back 2 or 3 times to make sure you're clear. That's the scary part. Thinking you're over this and suddenly having it roar back into your life. And now I know why you said to never give anybody money for the bus, I said, forcing a smile. Pat laughed. No, I tell you that because I'm cheap. But never give your money to a black-eyed ghoul, okay? I keep bailing you out, even I need my beauty rest. They left as the sun was starting to rise. We were supposed to meet another contact from the mayor's office, but Pat pushed the meeting and let me rest. When I finally crashed out, I was out for a good 15 hours. We published the story and it helped to launch my career. I don't tell people about my encounter with the tag-along kids. No reason to bring it up. As Pat said, unless you experience it, people think you're nuts when you talk about it. However, I always keep an eye open for them, especially when I'm on the bus. Once it happens to you, you never really forget it. Every flickering light gives you pause. Every giggle you hear could potentially be a harbinger of doom. It changes you. I hear that the new administration wants to improve public transit, put more lights at the stops, run the buses more often, that sort of thing. Whatever pushes those kids further into the shadows is A-okay with me. You stop the tag-along kids from harassing passengers, you've got my vote. As a teenager, I discovered that I was a night owl. I blame the internet partially, but also there was a weird thrill associated with being awake while the rest of the world slumbers. You feel like an explorer glimpsing something that few people have ever seen. Granted, most of the time growing up, the only thing I glimpsed during those hours were video games and, well, you know what. But you get my point. It's unnatural to be nocturnal as a human. There's a thrill to being out of step with the natural order. To that end, I started working the overnight shift at the front desk of a hotel. While there isn't a ton of people who come breezing in at those hours, you see more traffic than you would imagine. It mainly was exhausted road-tripping families looking for a place to catch some Z's before the next leg of their trip, or couples meeting up for a clandestine affair with lust clouding their eyes. It's always easy to spot a cheating couple. Still, there was enough of them to keep you busy. Not overworked, but steady. While I had never intended hotel work to be a career, I did find a lot of joy in the work, and as an added bonus, I was really good at it. About a year into the gig, the big boss sat me down and asked what my plans were post-college. I said I thought I might move to the coast and look for work that would take advantage of my major. At the time it was psychology, but everything was up in the air at the moment. The big boss told me that if I wanted, there would be a night manager position opening up at a property the owner had just purchased in Cincinnati. The starting pay was great and it had tremendous benefits. And if I had a degree in hospitality management, my pay could double in the first year. I had no real love for psychology nor any real job prospects in the field at the time. Plus the idea of grad school had started to fill me with dread. I decided that I would take the plunge and go for it. I shook the big boss's hand and my new career path was set. In a year, I would be the night manager at a newly renovated hotel in a major city. I was thrilled. A year later, I packed up my stuff and I moved to Cincinnati. Built in 1922, the Pullman Hotel was a vintage building that had once been the city's crown jewel but had since fallen into disrepair. What once was the town's hotspot with a lively big band and front-page style galas had become a flop house that catered to transients staying week to week, or ladies of the night staying hour to hour. The guts of the building looked like an open sore that never totally scabbed over. But the facade on the outside could still catch you by surprise. It had that 20s Art Deco look that made even the drabbest office building stand out. Where the Pullman was located, it shined like a diamond in a pile of trash. But urban renewal was becoming all the rage and gentrification came calling. Soon all the dilapidated buildings nearby started to change owners, and construction crews shared the streets with unhoused people's tents. My new boss bought the Pullman for a song and took a buffer's rag to that dull diamond. The transformation was impressive. The Pullman looked as glamorous as the day it first opened. My boss took special care to keep the decor as accurate to the era as possible while adding modern touches. And it worked. The local press went gaga for the restoration, and soon the Pullman was filling up with travelers from all over the country. The shift in the population of the surrounding area had happened. As always, working-class people were priced out of a place that they had lived in for decades, as rich, white yuppies moved in. As if to put an exclamation point on the whole gentrification endeavor, a Starbucks opened around the corner. While the Pullman filled with new staff, there were a lot of holdovers from the previous regime. My boss thought these people knew the hotel at its worst and deserved to see it at its best. I found that touching. That was something they didn't have to do, but it engendered goodwill to the mostly new staff. The first 3 months went by smoothly. I loved the night shift and the crew was great. We all got along and kept the Pullman humming. I genuinely loved my night security crew. A few were holdovers from the other owners and we just clicked. They had hundreds of stories from their time serving at the flophouse. Some wild stuff happened in the old Pullman. Omar, the head of security, liked to talk about the guests who checked in but never checked out. It was his clever way of saying ghosts. He said the building was filled with them. A lot of people had died in the hotel during its flop days. Omar mentioned that even after 5 years on the job, he still got goosebumps while doing his nightly rounds. He was glad for these security cameras that the new owner had installed. It meant he didn't have to brush up against specters so often. I loved the stories that Omar told, but I thought that they were just that. Stories. I don't believe in anything paranormal, especially ghosts. Oftentimes, the evidence that people mentioned with ghosts were all explainable. Orbs were just dust or bugs. Dark figures were just shadows that hit the right way. Voices picked up by spirit boxes or EVP recordings were just our brains trying to make sense of some random electrical noise. Most ghostly faces were just everyday objects and tricks of the light. Face pareidolia is hardwired into our brains. We seek out faces that look like us. Ever seen a face in a piece of toast or a tree? It's your brain looking for others like you. Nothing more. But Omar was a true believer. He told me about all the times that he saw strange things in the hotel. There was the time he saw a disembodied hand open the emergency exit door on the second floor. Or the time he heard what sounded like people laughing in the empty downstairs boiler room. My favorite was the time that he was climbing down an access ladder in the basement and saw a face staring at him in the room below. Bro, I damn near crapped myself when I saw that face. I shot up that ladder faster than a rocket. As I said, Omar had a million stories about the Pullman, and he loved sharing them with us during downtimes. But while each story was different, they always started the same way. It's a cold spot. That's when you know that they're there, he'd say, shaking his head. That's when I bug out before.
Oh, पूरी आवाज जा रही है माइक में. Oh shit. इतना annoying है यार. बंद ही कर देता हूँ फोर्टनाइट खेलना परमानेंट. घटिया लैग सा. सीरियसली यार यार डिलीट कर दूंगा ये फैक्ट। मैं पिक को मेल डाल ही देता हूँ। ऑलरेडी मेरे को वही स्टेप्स बता रहे जो मैं कर चुका हूँ। convince friends to install the game and play together. But to my bad luck, this one's not on a good way. So I have a glitch. When I go to live, my teammate but they already joined the this stupid game. Fix up the teammate instead of reviving the assigned key for pickup is F. I tried to re-sign different keys for pickup and live, but still is a problem. And the fun part is that this problem is in Battle Royale only, not in Save the World. So instead giving me solutions to do in my on my part, which I have already done and tried many other things. I will give me some solid solutions. I to do this from my life. यार फिर भी पहले मुझे लग रहा था कि ये सिस्टम ओवरहीट हो रहा है उसके कारण है, तो मैंने पूरा सिस्टम क्लीन करके रीपेस्टिंग कर दी ताकि टेम्परेचर मेंटेन कर। एलईडी लाइट्स एंड ऑल भी मैंने बंद कर दी ताकि भाई सिस्टम की पावर सही जगह पे यूज हो। ठीक है, गेम के ग्राफिक्स एडजस्ट कर दिए। मैंने सारा मैक्सिमम है।